Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, my students. You are welcome to another live class of ANP313 Poultry Production. Yes, my name is Dr. Abayomi Bankole. So far, we have done 2 successful live classes in this e-facilitation session for this semester. And today we will be going to the 3rd one. Yes, we'll be going straight into the 3rd class. Yes, so let me share my screen so we can move on. So here we have it. Here we have it. So we'll have this topic before us, the fundamentals for successful poultry production. Yes, the fundamentals for a successful poultry production. Now, in the last 2 weeks, in the first class precisely, we were able to talk about or discuss on the basic terms used in animal health. No, we were able to look at the equipment and the layouts of the poultry house. In second class, we delved into the basic principles for the management of the hatchery for a successful poultry egg production. And so today, we are looking at the fundamentals for successful poultry production. So, straight to it, let me start by the introduction and the transformation of plants, animals, mineral matters into forms highly prized as a source of food for man is the primary basis for the poultry industry. Now, from the nutritional standpoint, the nutrients contained in a poultry feed are as useful to man as to a laying hen. However, as eggs or poultry meats, these nutrients are a much more palatable form. Now, for profitable poultry production, the conversion of feed to eggs and meat must be done efficiently and economically. To now formulate the rations that will do this, it's necessary to know certain things about the food nutrients and the use by poultry birds. So, we have 3 major intended learning outcomes. At the end of today's topic, you should be able to, number 1, understand the purpose of poultry feeding. Number 2, select feed ingredients to compound diet for poultry birds. And lastly, we should be able to outline the forms of feed presentation in poultry industry. So let's start by defining some terms. We'll start with nutrient. Now, any feed constituent or group of feed constituents of same general chemical composition or a pure chemical compound that aids in the support of life is called nutrients. This consists of carbohydrates, for instance, protein, minerals, vitamins, and water. Then we see feedstuff. This is synonymous to feed, food, or fodder, although it is broader, covering all materials included in the diet because of their nutritional properties. It includes natural feeds of animal origin, synthetic, and other pure nutrients which are added into the natural feeds. Then we talk of feed. Like we said earlier, it's like feedstuff. Feedstuff is, it comprises of a bigger. So a mixture of feedstuff blended or processed in a form which is acceptable to animals is called feed. It is merely the carrier of nutrient and potential energy in a ration. The number 4, supplements. Supplements are feed mixtures used with another feed to improve the nutritive balance of total ration. And this is intended to be fed undiluted as a supplement to other feeds, in addition to other feeds. Now, it could be offered free choice with other parts of the rations, or further diluted or mixed to produce a complete feed. Now, ration, that's another term, is an allowance of feed given animal over a specified period of time. For example, you hear things like daily ration, or weekly ration. Now, this should furnish the entire nutrient required in an adequate amount. Now, look at diet. Diet simply connotes a feed which is offered to an animal over a non-specified period of time. It is formulated for special purposes such as experimentation, special physiological conditions, probably in sickness or for production purposes. Dry matter. Dry matter is made up of inorganic and organic substances. The inorganic matter is composed of minerals or ash. Organic substances consist of combustible materials such as sugar, starch, fat, protein, and fiber. Ash. Now, this is an inorganic constituent present in small quantities in all feeds and in all parts of the body. It is a non-combustible material. Then we talk of nitrogen-free extracts. This is made up mostly of starches and sugar. It is used by the body for fueling, which furnishes energy and provides heat. Then we talk of protein energy ratio. This simply means the amount of protein in feed or group of feeds as compared with the combined carbohydrates and fats. When we see a ration as a protein energy ration of 1 to 5, simply mean that it contains 1 part of protein to every 5 parts of carbohydrates and fats. Now, let's look at the second aspect of today's class, and the major aspect for that, a major part for that matter. Look at classification of feed ingredients. Yes, so we start with carbohydrates. That's the feed ingredients. Now, carbohydrates, which are the major source of energy in poultry diets, include grains such as maize, guinea corn, millet, wheat, and broken rice. It also includes cereal byproducts such as maize bran or offer, wheat bran or offer, rice bran or offer, and guinea corn offer. And we talk of starch roots and tubers. These are carbohydrates. An example of that includes cassava flour, cassava chips, and sweet potato. Now, the dietary inclusion of 30 to 60% of this energy source into the poultry diet is recommended with the upper limit mainly for young growing birds. Of course, the lower limit for the aging birds. Now, let's look at protein. Now, commonly used protein feeds ingredients, poultry ration formulation and feeding includes the following. We have vegetable or plant sources such as groundnut cake, soybean cake, full fat soybean, cottonseed cake, and palm kernel cake. And of course, we have the animal protein sources such as fish meal, meat, and bone meal, so on and so forth. Then let's go to fats. That's another classification of feed ingredient. Now, fats have considerable quantities of fats. Considerable quantity of fats are used in poultry feeding primarily as a potent source of energy. Fats normally contain 2 to 3 times as much metabolizable energy per unit of weight as grains. So, major sources available as vegetable oil include, as vegetable oil, fat soil, hard fat, soft fat, and hydrolyzed animal fat. And the usual practical limit for adding fat is 3 to 5% of the diet. Those special technique related diets may contain as high as 7 or 8% added fats. Now, rations very high in fat tend to kick, do not flow readily. So you have to be careful. You don't store fat for too long. You purchase and use as needed. All right, so number 4, vitamins. Now, the vitamins are commercially available in pure forms or vitamin concentrates at relatively low cost. They can be added to poultry feed by means of premix, which supplies specified amount of each vitamin. Now, certain ingredients available for poultry feeding are potent sources of vitamins. This includes yeast, fat solubles, stellate solubles, liver meal, alfalfa meal, and milk byproduct. Now, all the fat soluble vitamins are supplied by fats and oil. Then we go to minerals. Simply put, sources of the major minerals for poultry rations include bone meal, limestone, oyster shell, calcium phosphate, defluorinated phosphate, common salt, and trace mineral premixes. Then we do talk of water. Yes, water is another classification of feed ingredients. Now, some water is available in the feed itself as metabolizable water, but a bulk of it will be separately provided in drinking cans. Cool, clean water should be provided at all times. The water should be free from the excess salts, which might have laxative effect. So let's go to feeding practices and presentation. Yes. Now, the success of raising poultry depends very much on adequate feeding of the birds. Feed is offered to poultry at all times or in a controlled fashion. So we'll look at the at all time, this ad libitum or unrestricted feeding program. We'll also look at a controlled feeding system. When feeds, so number 1, the unrestricted ad libitum, also known as ad libitum feeding program. Under this, when feeds are available to the birds at all times, the practice commonly referred to as ad libitum, as I mentioned. This means that this method of feeding allows poultry to consume feed to appetite or wants. So, birds raised for meat, that is broilers, are preferably fed in this fashion. The advantages include more uniform body weight attainment at maturity. Number 2, feed management technique, which is less complicated as compared to feeding regime in feed restriction programs. Number 3, birds feed themselves at will and less stressed. But let's look at the disadvantages of the system or this feeding program. Number 1 is birds overeats and increase feed costs during the rearing period. Number 2, the meat type broiler breeders tend to overeat and grow excessively, thus compromising production efficiency and profitability. Number 3, we will see overweight broiler breeders which are prone to prolapse, reduced fertility, hatchability, and reproductive failures. So we go to the second feeding program now, which is restricted or controlled feeding program. Now, feed is supplied to birds in this feeding system in limited quantity and or quality. Various bird strains are often grown on controlled feeding programs to limit weight, particularly broiler breeder strains. The female feed intake may be adjusted to delay egg at sexual maturity to maintain desired body weight and reduce prolapses. We mentioned prolapses in that ad libitum system all the time. Now, if birds are overweight, some form of feed restriction are sometimes imposed. It is advisable to start a restricted feeding program from 6 weeks of age, although some breeders recommend earlier ages as low as 2 to 3 weeks of age. Now, shall we look at advantages? Advantages include reduction in the cost of feeding the birds during the growing period. Number 2, feed restriction results in later maturing birds that lay larger eggs at the initial period. Number 3, birds in this category are less fat, thus protecting the bird from breeding problems due to excess fat. And lastly, it leads to the production of more hatchable eggs during the laying year. Now we look at its advantages. Excuse me. So, number 1 disadvantage is management of the restricted feeding program can be quite complicated than ad libitum feeding. Number 2, birds may be more uneven body size, mainly because of the differential feed intake of bulls versus timid birds. It can actually be more troublesome to feed the birds because they fight among themselves in a bid to get at the feed. Increase in cannibalism and mortality problems also arises. All right. So finally, we are going to look at forms of feed. Now, different kinds of chicken feeds are all available as commercially or home manufactured feeds. Commercial feeds, in most cases, come in the form of a dry mixture called mash, sometimes pellets or combos. Now, whether the commercial or home mixed, feeds must match the different protein needs of chicks, grower, broiler, and layers. It is the protein content which distinguishes what feed should be given to these different ages and types of chicken. Among the ways of feeding chickens include 1, the all-mash system. It is the use of complete ground feed. It's well adapted to use with the mechanical feeding system. Wet mash is an example under the all-mash system. And here, you see the chicken usually eat more wet mash than dry because they enjoy its consistency. However, wet mashes, particularly in hot weather, go bad very quickly. See, they spoil very quickly. Hence, only an amount which will be consumed within 2 hours should be fed. Another type under the all mash system is the dry mash. When it is well balanced and stored properly, dry mash usually is the best way of feeding confined chickens. And they are commercially sold with this designation. For chick mash, it contains 20% protein. For grower mash, it contains 16 to 17% protein. For broiler mash, 10 to 23% protein. Finally, for the layers, 15 to 17% protein. So, another form of feed is pellet or crumble. Now, commercial mixtures in pellet or crumble forms are excellent, but usually cost more. Chickens will produce slightly better with the pelleted or crumble forms. Pellet and crumble forms reduce a lot of feed wastage, and the chicken may eat them even a little better. Now, so we have the whole grain form of feed. Now, feed is often used for whole grain either by itself or mixed with other nutrients. Sometimes whole grain is scattered in the litter. The whole grain method of feeding is not recommended. Why? When fed with other ingredients, the grain is sitting first. As a reason, this results in improper diet. When scattered, much is contaminated and lost. So we have the cafeteria system, another form of feeding. Now, in this instance, birds are allowed to balance their own ration. Grain is fed in one feed, and a high, like 26% protein supplement is fed in another feeder. So, feed is kept in feeders at all times. Older birds may tend to eat much grain and not enough protein supplements when the system is used. So, to conclude today's class, we want to look at tips to achieve a high feed efficiency. So we'll pick it one after the other, read them one after the other. So, number one, you need to have adequate feeding space that will provide, the space has to be there at all times, ensuring that about 75% of the birds can feed at the same time. And number two, feeders should be well designed with leaves to prevent feed wastage. Feeders should be filled to not more than half full capacity. Then feeders should be properly hung, ensuring that the level of feeders correspond to the back of the chicken and activate the feed in the feeders regularly with the hands. Number five, to avoid feed contamination and wastage, rat population should constantly kept. Number six, attendants should minimize feed spillage during the process of serving feed to reduce wastage. Now, number seven, do not store feed for too long in a damp place. Otherwise, it can become moldy and they will spoil. All right, so we have come to the end of today's class. In summary, what have we been able to discuss? Number one, we have seen definitions of terms used in feeds and feeding. Number two, so the feed ingredient classification based on nutrient supply. Number three, we'll also look at the different types of feeding programs. And lastly, look at the different forms of feed presentation. All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of today's class. Please ensure that you go to the virtual learning environment platform to have the recorded version of this class, as none of you were able to attend today's class. We couldn't find any student in the class today. So please get the recorded version there. So we'll meet in the next class. Bye-bye.